Today we're going to learn about the fall of the Western Roman Empire. By the 400s, Rome had been divided into two empires, the West and the East. Just basically to better govern such a large landmass. You would have an emperor in the East and an emperor in the West. We're going to focus on the Western Roman Empire because it's going to fall during the 5th century AD. The Eastern Roman Empire will last another 1,000 years. More about them next time. How did the Western Roman Empire fall? It wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just barbarian hordes coming in and invading the empire. It was a multitude of things. So if you look at your notes on the PowerPoint, we have Rome by the 2nd century, we're talking the 100s, it stopped expanding. So Rome would get a lot of its wealth by invading a new land, enslaving the people, taking the resources from the land, whether it's wheat for grain, or it's trees for lumber, taking the natural resources and stealing whatever wealth is in that land and distributing it across the empire. So Rome has stopped expanding, so it's not doing those things anymore. Because it stopped expanding and there's a shortage of wealth, the Roman government is raising taxes. And when you have taxes going up, it usually hurts the economy. You have economic stagnation. Stagnation means inactivity. The economy is not improving. It's going down, just like what was happening to the economy when we shut down all our businesses due to COVID-19, right? The economy stopped expanding. Also, because there's a shortage of wealth, Roman soldiers start to attack farms for food. Not just foreign soldiers, but also invaders. Barbarian invaders are attacking farms and stealing food. And when you have Roman soldiers and barbarians stealing the people's food and attacking the farms, you have a food shortage. Starvation's not good for an empire either. There was also a decline of agriculture. All the nutrients in the soil were being used up because the soil was being overused, also contributing to the food shortages. There was also an overuse of slave labor. So think about it. You run a business. What is your biggest expense to run your company? Paying the employees. So as a business owner, you're trying to think of ways to have less employees so you could have a bigger profit margin, right? Business owners today tend to invest money into new technologies, new machines to replace the workers. So you have technology improving. But if you have an abundance of slaves, more than you know what to do with, why would you invest your money in new technology? When the Roman Empire was at its height, it was having all sorts of new technological advancements. Instead of having all their employees, all their laborers carrying water to the crops, employers were like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so they're investing their money, and water wheels were being invented and aqueducts were being invented and constructed. Instead of using all these laborers to grind up grain to make bread, they invented grist mills. But with such an abundance of slaves, these businesses are no longer investing in new technology, and so technology just stagnates. It's no longer improving. Mass immigration. Okay, immigration is a good thing. We all know that. But I'm going to compare immigration to wine. So wine in moderation is good. It's good for the heart. It's good for the blood pressure. It promotes longevity, living a long time. It's good for the memory. But what happens when you drink wine excessively, right? You become an alcoholic. It'll destroy your liver. So immigration and moderation is good, but in excess, there are problems. So prime example, it's the year 378. The Emperor Valens receives word that there are a lot of Gothic refugees that want amnesty into the Roman Empire. So the Gothic people, they're famished, they don't have a lot of food, and when you're poor and you're hungry, you become desperate. So once Valens lets them immigrate into the Roman Empire, they start to raid farms, they start to attack people and start to steal, and they start to riot. These riots become really intense, and Valens has to ultimately lead his Roman army against the Gothic people. It all culminates at the Battle of Adrianople. At this battle, 2/3 of the Roman army is defeated. Even the emperor himself, Valens, is assassinated. So this is an example where too much immigration kind of backfired on the Romans. Political trouble. You know the old saying, a house divided cannot stand? Well, the Roman government was divided. And so there was a lot of turmoil from within, and that really weakened the government. For example, in the 3rd century alone, there was a 50-year period where 22 Roman emperors were all assassinated. Lastly, we get to the invasions. So, the invasions of the barbarians. Who are the barbarians? The barbarians are what the Romans called anyone outside of their borders. They simply saw them as savages. Well, on the outer borders of Spain, there were a people called the Visigoths. And in 410, the Visigoths, led by a guy named Alaric, invaded Rome. And he was the first to attack the city itself and heavily loot from it. But Rome would struggle on. 30 years later, we have the Huns, led by Attila the Hun. The Hun were a Germanic people, but Attila built this empire, and they really started to attack and invade the northern border of the empire, also weakening it. Then in 455, 15 years later, we have the Vandals. The Vandals are a Polish people, and they invaded the Roman Empire, and they looted, they pillaged, they greatly damaged the city of Rome itself, to the point where to this day the word vandal is synonymous for destroying public property, because that's who the Vandals were. 20 years later, the end finally came to Western Rome. See, during the 400s, the Roman Empire was having a lot of trouble finding Romans to serve in the military, so they were hiring barbarians to serve in the Roman military. And one barbarian in particular, his name was Odoacer, rose up in the ranks and became a general of a Roman legion. With all barbarians, they didn't have any love for the Roman religion at this point, Christianity. They didn't have love for the Roman tradition, the Roman culture, or even for Rome itself. These barbarians just wanted power. And so Odoacer took his legion and marched on Rome. And in 476, Odoacer took Rome. And the last Western Roman emperor, a 12-year-old boy named Romulus Augustulus, was sent into exile. And to this day, historians don't know what ever happened to him. With the fall of Rome, Western Europe was plunged into an era in history called the Dark Ages, which would last 1,000 years. Though Western Rome fell, the Eastern Roman Empire will thrive and continue because of the wealth of its capital, Constantinople. The Eastern Roman Empire was also known as the Byzantine Empire, and that will be the topic for our next video lesson. I'll see you then.